Hey folks, in this video I'm going to share with you some techniques that I use for digitally coloring a portrait. So this particular image was taken from Earth's World. I'll put a link to Earth's World on Instagram so you can check out all the amazing portrait studies. I often use these portrait studies when I'm practicing my own portrait techniques. So I've got everything sketched. This is my underdrawing basically. You can kind of see how I kind of initially blocked it out. I flipped the image back and forth to make sure that I'm not getting any weird distortion. And I'm going to work on a layer underneath my ink layer. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to simply make a lasso tool selection around the entire figure. It's okay if it's a little bit sloppy. There we go. And I'll start off with just kind of a base peach color. I'll come back in and trim out the parts that I don't want. Again, not being super precise about this. And what I want to do now is with this base color layer that I've established for the skin tone, I'm going to use the lasso tool and just block out the areas that are going to be somewhat darker. So I'm just going to hold down the shift key and pick areas that are on the face that appear to be darker. Now the cross hatching does help to delineate where those shaded areas are going to be. And I'm just using that as a guide. So here around the neck, you can see it's a little bit dark here on the nose. And here on the shadow. So I'll hit Command J, Command U, and instantly bring those dark values in. I can switch back to my brush tool. I'll use the color that I've started out with. Just come back in. Makes it look a little bit more organic. And over here. Alright, so those are my dark values. I'm going to now pick my highlights. Use the lasso tool again. We see a highlight around the nose. We see it on one of the eye sockets. These are just the brightest areas that are on the composition. I'm not going to be super precious about it. Just hold down the shift key and generally identify where the lightest parts are on the image. And I'm only focusing on the face so far. Alright, now what I'll do is make a new layer, come back in, sample some white. This is going to be the areas that are receiving an intense amount of light. Doesn't have to be super duper accurate, but you want to make it believable, right? So come back in around the ears. The ears are a little bit darker. Command J, Command U. And then we've got the flesh down here. Command J. It's going to be a harsher shadow. And then over here we have some areas that are going to be somewhat light. I'll just sample. So I'm not going for a super duper realistic rendering on this, just enough to where it looks believable. And then we've got, highlight around the eyes. Got some white hair here. the eyes are a little bit red. I'll kind of bring that in. And just add a subtle reflection to give that eye a little bit more pop. And now come back in with the shirt. Lasso tool around that. Lasso tool around this other part. Go back to the base layer, Command J, Command U. In order to get this tan color, I can first alter the hue, then drop the saturation. And then come back in and identify the shadows are a little bit more bluish in tint. So make a lasso tool selection around those areas. Command J, Command U. Kind of give them a little bit of a bluish tint. Drop the saturation down, drop the darkness down. And come back in. And over here, the colors are a little bit warmer. So we'll go in with some warm values here. And now I'm ready to tackle the hair. Just generally do a sweeping selection around the hair. Again, using the base layer, Command J, Command U. Let's find a brownish complement here. Let's see. We'll go with that. And then we'll come back in with some lighter values of that brown. I'm just following the general direction of the hair. Maybe I'll put this on the top first layer. And we can see that there's some mixture. There's some light brown. There's also some white. We'll come back and we'll add that in. So the areas that are receiving the most light are going to be towards the front and on the fringes over here. We'll come back in with some white. Again, we're going for believable. You know, obviously there's going to be some discrepancy between the reference image and what I've got here, but the idea is I'm not necessarily trying to make an exact copy. And now I can see, you know, in looking at this, one way I can check is to just convert everything to grayscale. That helps me decide like where the lightest values are. It looks like I still have some light values here along the cheeks that I haven't taken into account. So I'll go back to my base layer. This is the basic shape here. Grayscale can be very, very handy. You can also blur the image out so that you can easily identify your values. Alright, so let's see. Light. And now I've got some really light values over here, right? So let's go up here. Don't forget those light values. Kind of helps give your piece some form. So now I can convert that back. When I'm adding my highlights, it's important to kind of make sure that that's on the topmost layer. And so now that I have this, looking back at the shirt, there's some areas that are going to be a little bit darker. Come back in with the lasso tool. Like these areas are going to be a lot darker and a little bit more saturated too. Command J, Command U, pump the saturation. And again, do a value comparison. Check to see your grayscales. Some highlights around the ear. So I'll go ahead and add that in. Sample this value. It's that combination of light, medium, dark values that gives something some form when you're adding color in. Alright, and then the last thing that I like to do here is I can look at, I've got these various watercolor backgrounds, and I can find something that kind of, if there's a lot of warm colors in the face, cool colors outside the face. So for the warm areas, I'm going to pick something that's going to be in that same vein here. So this fall watercolor, just pop this on top. And then I can set this layer to either overlays too red, but soft light might be pretty good. I can dial in the colors a little bit by hitting the hue saturation. And so now I've got something that's a little bit duller, but also I want to just use that for the head and the hair, so I can just make a quick sloppy selection around this part. Command J puts that on its own layer, and then for these cooler values over here on the shirt, I'll go back and look at some winter watercolors. I'll pick something like this. And basically what I'll do is select, I think multiply. Well, I don't know what I'm going to do with that. I'll just go ahead and make the selection around the jacket. Command J, and then choose, let's see, I think color burn might be good, but let's just take a look and see what other options are there. Sometimes I'll just scrub through this to see what the options are. Yeah, I think color burn's going to be it. So, yeah, you can always come back in and you can add more tweaks, but I think I'm going to leave this video right here. This is, you know, just kind of like where I left off. I usually end up coming back in and adding other little doodads. It's not totally finished yet, but that should give you some insight into how you go through my coloring process. I hope you found this video to be informative. Thank you so much for watching. Let me know what videos you'd like to see here. I like to mix and match different things. I like to do realistic stuff. I also like to do cartoony stuff, so it's important to kind of do both, I think. Anyway, thanks so much for watching. See you in the next video.